So, Raquel, so I'm looking at my podcast schedule because we couldn't remember if we had talked once before, when it was. And so it was episode 76, which was like about a year ago. So that went live on December 5th of 2022. And your book, the houseplants, the magic of houseplants.
Yeah, everyday plant magic.
Yes, everyday plant magic. Sorry, I titled the podcast "The Magic of
Yeah.
Blah, I can't talk. Blah. The magic of houseplants just come out. We talked about that. Everyday houseplant magic, right? I'm saying
Yes, close. Everyday plant magic.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My goodness, this is the real deal, folks. I am a little sleep deprived lately as we have a new puppy in the house, and he's very much a puppy, and yeah, I will just say that. Okay.
Well, I'll give you advice that they give to new moms.
Oh,
sleep
okay.
when the baby's sleeping. So when you see him all just like curled up on his bed or wherever, you're like, it's nap time. I can take a little 20-minute shut eye.
Yeah, I do remember that advice from. I'm not a mother, but I do remember hearing that advice.
Well, I'm going to push back on that, Tessa. How many pets do you have now?
This will be 4.
Okay, so I would definitely consider you a mom, whether it's a pet mom. Like that's momming. That's momming.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, they are my babies. Everybody knows. You know, Beha, the black kitty, he's just constantly on the show, sitting on my lap.
Hi. Aww.
Anytime I record, she is here.
She likes your voice.
No, maybe that's it.
Yeah, she likes your voice a lot.
Aw, that's sweet. Animals are just, speaking of magic.
Yeah.
Animals are magic.
They sure are. They sure are. And it's so interesting because kind of like the plants, I see animals as, energy workers.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I have a question. Have you heard this? I can't remember where I heard this, but it might have been an article that I read a long time ago that cats will sit on your stomach. I want to say it was something like because the direction of their energy swirls in a different direction than yours.
Interesting.
I'm not sure exactly in a tangible sense or scientifically what that means or how to explain it, but these things sometimes are beyond the realm of science.
Yes,
and
agreed.
Sometimes, it feels good when my kitty sits on my tummy, and if she's sitting on my tummy, it's like, oh, she knows I need some healing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. Cats in particular, they are very healing, and some cats really take that role very seriously.
Yeah.
Where they really see their role is to, be that energy kind of alchemist for their people. So if they're sitting on your tummy, especially, after you're eating, they might be helping with digestion, creating some more heat and warmth going to that area. When they purr on you, that's a vibration that creates a reverberation inside of your body, which transforms energy too. Which as a cat owner, I'm sure you've experienced way more than me, who does not have a cat.
Literally right now, I'm experiencing it.
Yep. Yep. And you can feel that purr in your bones, right? Like you can feel it in your body.
Yeah. It definitely feels so good.
Yeah.
It's making me kind of sleepy, to be honest with you. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I love that. That's such a nice reminder. That's so sweet. Do you have pets? I know you're
I have
mom.
one dog, lots and lots of plants.
Yeah.
One puppy. I would like to get more, but I can't do that unless I have like my family kind of like bought in to help because I can't take care of another living thing.
Yeah.
On that capacity.
I hear ya. It's a lot of work.
It
What kind of
is.
dog is it?
She's a pound puppy, so we did one of the DNA tests on her, and let's see if she'll come up. Wookie. We'll see if she comes up. But she's like 45 pounds. She's a mix of an Australian cattle dog, and she was found in Mexico, so she's got all kinds of stuff in her. She's got a little bit of pit bull in her. She's got some like collie in her. Basically, we did a DNA test, and they're like super mutt. She's a super mutt.
They're the best.
I
They're
know,
like
the best.
the best, and Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a street dog from Mexico. Her name was Daisy, and literally she was the best dog on the planet. And of course I'm biased because I was her mother. She
Yes.
lived to be 18 years old.
Oh,
18. And we just
wow.
threw down this past summer. She
Wow.
was the
18
one-year dog.
is a really special number too. I mean, it represents life in my culture. Chai. 18 is Chai, so it actually represents the number of life itself.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I love that.
In numerology. But I guess if it was really numerology, it would be broken down to the number nine. And the number nine actually has this kind of completion energy to it, almost like a mastery energy to it. So, but yeah, in my culture, the number 18 is very, very symbolic.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that. Numerology is so interesting.
it is. It's actually one of the things we discuss in my group coaching program, Intuitive Magic. We go into numbers and some of their spiritual meanings and, how do you get to your life path number and things like that.
Oh, can we talk about that? How do you
Sure.
get through?
I mean, I am not a numerologist by any means, but I've dabbled a little. And so your life path number, basically what you do is you take your birthday and you add
Uh-huh.
up all the digits of your birthday until you get to a single number.
Okay.
And then that single number will tell you something. It's almost like the numbers have their own archetypes to them, their own personalities to them. So, for example, when you take my birthday and you add all the digits together, it ends up being number five. And five represents someone who likes to learn through experience, is very adventurous, likes to travel, likes to kind of prioritize adventure and joy. But one of the biggest pieces of five is like this kind of independent streak and like, I gotta do to know kind of vibe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense. I could see that. I'm curious. I want to quickly do math, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah,
do
do it
it
when we
in
get off. And
yeah.
then send it to me and I'll share with you what the numbers mean.
Okay, cool. I will take you up on this. There's a
Fun.
lot of topics I want to cover in a short period of time. One of them is so I know you've been busy since we last spoke. There's some projects
Yeah.
coming out. Self-care for eco-anxiety is on the horizon. This is a 52 weekly practices for positive personal change through the power of nature. And I know nature is one thing that we're very passionate about. We briefly
Yeah.
touched on it in our prior podcast. This is a huge subject right now
Yes, it
with
is.
climate change and I mean, I don't even know where to start with this. It just feels like thank you, Raquel, for writing it.
Well,
Yeah,
I know
go.
where we can start,
Yeah,
Tessa. Let's
tell me.
start with you.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
start with your experience because this is something we've discussed before. We've talked
Mhm.
about how do we deal with these emotions and sensations and feelings that we feel related to our relationship to nature and what we see happening to nature in the world
Yeah.
around us. So, why don't we start by talking a little bit about your relationship with eco anxiety?
Oh my God, it's terrifying. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. It's currently where I reside, and um, it's almost like there's like this collective amnesia, or perhaps it's an influx of folks moving into this region from never having lived here before. But I find myself frequently having this conversation that feels like people are not that concerned about the weather, and I'm like, uh, okay, in the history of the time that from my earliest memories to adulthood when I left living in the Pacific Northwest, I never experienced summers this hot as in the
Mm,
past couple of years. The smoke is like, I mean, the forest fires in the gorge in this area are just out of control. It's just part of a season now. Like
yeah.
literally, we are having a season of smoke.
Yeah.
And so it makes, I love backpacking. I love being in nature. And I was face to face with that this summer when I literally didn't know how far away I was from a fire that was at a level 3 evacuation. And
Wow.
I was out there on a trail and it was apocalyptic. I mean, I could barely see in front of me. The smoke was so thick. And then there's this thing that happens. It's like a pyrotechnic thunderstorm where that
Mm-hmm.
heat from a fire can like converge with cold air and make a thunderstorm happen in the middle of a wildfire, which is not good. So I was
Right.
in the middle of that too. So all this to say,
God.
I mean, it's real. And how do I
Yeah.
continue to go and do and things that I enjoy, that I love, that bring me life, that light me up, and maintain my safety and respect nature and respect everything that's going on. I don't even, yeah, it just feels overwhelming. It feels scary. It feels like my life is getting smaller
Mm-hmm.
in that
Mm-hmm.
way. You know what I mean?
I do. I very much know what you mean, and thank you so much for sharing that. That is very frightening. And the truth is that what we're facing is very frightening, which is, I think, one of the reasons why so many people won't talk about it, won't
Mm-hmm.
face it, won't even look at it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's scary and because it feels overwhelming. That being said, we have to adapt to the situations we're in. At this point in time, when we're talking about climate change, we really are talking about mitigation and adaptation. We're kind of past the point of being able to kind of completely stop it.
Yeah.
There's levels of it that are unstoppable at this point, and we're living through it. This isn't something we're waiting for. I mean, yes, there will be more impacts that, especially that will come through with sea level rise, with continued fire seasons, continued, droughts in some areas, deluges in others. This is our new normal, and it will be for a while. And it's really important that we accept that. And in fact, one of the self care practices I share, in fact, the last self care practice I share in Self Care for Eco Anxiety, is a practice of radical acceptance. Because if we do not accept our reality, how do we deal with it? Plus, if we're resisting our reality, we're wasting a ton of energy on the resistance, which is energy we could be putting into adaptation and mitigation
Yeah.
and our own wellness, which is key. So, this is real. The threats and challenges we face are real. But the thing that's also real is that the solutions abound. There are so many solutions, and they're not far away. They are here and now. We have the knowledge, we have the technology. What we need is the corporate and political will.
Mm. Yeah. And
I
that to me feels like it's that, it makes me think of the, I got to attend TEDx this
hmm
last year, and there was,
Cool.
yeah, it was so cool. I mean, speak about being inspired for the future
Yeah.
and hopeful, that
Yeah.
those kinds of things give me hope and feel like, okay, there is, like you're saying, Raquel, there are solutions, and solutions do
Yes.
abound, and we are smart enough and capable enough, and we do have the power to affect real and lasting change. There was
Yeah.
a speaker, I think she was gosh, I'm not going to remember her name, so I'm not even going to try it. But she was speaking to this topic in terms of plastics being a fossil fuel, a
hmm
non-renewable, I believe it was fossil fuel,
Yeah,
and
most plastics are made from
oil.
petroleum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And basically, the takeaway was like, at a corporate and political level, that's where the change has to start. And
Yes.
we have to recognize that we need to stop, not on an individual level. Yeah, you and I, we can recycle, we can reduce, reuse, recycle, but that puts the shame and the blame
Yep.
on us.
Yes.
And that's not
Yes.
helpful, and that is not where change comes from.
Yes.
We do need to consume less, but we also need to produce less, and that comes from the big corporate entities,
Yes.
the production of these
Yes.
plastics.
Yeah. And I think this is an important conversation. And this is really what self care for eco anxiety is about. In the intro to the book, I talk about, what eco anxiety is, why it's important that we deal with it. And one of the things I really discuss is this idea that this isn't a book that's going to be shaming or blaming people into changing their behavior. This isn't a book that's really even about all the solutions to climate change, although solutions are discussed and some of the self-care practices I share very much increase your sustainability and decrease your negative footprint on the earth and increase your more positive footprint. Yeah, that's just a byproduct of these practices. But what this book is really about is helping people return to a place of love and reciprocity with earth. And so I have the self-care practices broken down into three different kind of larger themes. The first one being connecting with earth. First and foremost, we need to connect back with that which we are, which is nature. The second grouping is all about creating with nature because I had an experience. It unlocked so much within me, so much joy, so much empowerment, so much purpose, so much connection. So, this idea of being a co creator with Earth is really, really important. This is actually who we're meant to be as humans. We are meant to tend to the land, co create with Earth. And then the last bunch of self care practices are about giving back to Earth. And I really think it's important that first we connect and we create with Earth. We rekindle this reciprocal relationship with Earth and with nature, because then we give back as just a part of our relationship. It's not shame, it's not blame, it's love. It's love.
Mm.
And I really believe that love is a big part of our solution for everything moving forward. I was, when I was in my master's program, I was really being taught under that, idea of like scare them straight. And so there was so much doom and gloom. And that was my first time really experiencing eco anxiety, where I lost like 20 pounds. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I had to get on anti-anxiety meds. I started seeing a therapist. This was all when I was getting my master's, because the the ways that the information was being presented literally made me feel like, what's the point? What's the point of me doing this work? Are there solutions even possible? And I think for a long time we thought that if we scared people, that will motivate them. Fear is not a good motivator. Fear leads to apathy, overwhelm, and like burying our heads in the sand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think love, that's going to be our motivation from here on out.
Mhm. Oh, that's such a, when you said, you said something like, we have to accept it.
Yeah.
It's no longer
Yeah.
something we can stop, but it's rather something that we need to adapt to. That filled me with fear. And I
Well,
think
and
it's a denial, right?
yeah. And
For
I don't
me,
mean by that we can't stop certain things. It's never too late. Like, it
yeah,
really is never too late. But there's certain levels of change that we're just going to have to adapt to at this point.
well, sure. And I mean, I think one of those things is like, are we talking about temperature
Hmm.
differences? We're talking about air
Sea
quality,
level rise.
water,
Hmm.
access to clean water.
That I think actually can very much be changed based on human behavior.
Uh-huh. Tell
I
me more
think,
about this.
well, I think right now, like humans are, we are like our ingenuity, our creativity, these are gifts.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're utilizing them to the benefit of the whole. And I see the
Mhm.
whole as Earth itself. Right now, we're having this experience where there's too much water in some places and too little in others. It's not an issue of there not being enough water on the planet, because all the water that's ever existed on this planet is all the water that will ever exist on this planet, which blows my mind, but is really important for us to know. It's not coming, new water isn't coming from nowhere. Water is just cycled. So if we could use our human ingenuity and actually work together, what if we figured out ways of piping and moving water from areas where there's too little to areas where there's too much? Like there are ways that we can use our creative brains in collective ways to collaborate and actually share resources. There is enough to go around. I truly believe it. So I think that with with different systems in place, what we currently have, again, like, hey, let's get into acceptance here, right? Um,
Yeah.
we could address the issues of, not enough water here, too much water there, very differently than we currently are.
Yeah. I mean, similarly to food supply, like,
Yeah.
that's a very similar conversation, I feel, where there's not enough food and there's an overabundance of food. It's a
Yeah.
matter of access and distribution and the willingness to share and the willingness to solution. I 1,000% agree with you. And I'm glad you brought up that point. Um, I often think about this because half of my family is from Mexico. And just recently, when we go down there, we typically will go to the beach, we'll go to Sayulita, and there's not enough water. There's not enough water
Mm.
there. And they're driving it in on these big trucks, and everything has to be bottled. And I remember having this conversation with my mother-in-law before she passed. She passed away in 2020 due to COVID.
Oh, I'm so
But she would
sorry.
Yeah, it
May
was
her
too.
memory always be a blessing to you all.
It is. It is. She was such a such a sage. And speaking of intuition, which we'll talk about in a little bit, she was definitely intuitive.
Yeah.
Um, what I remember her telling me. So when you go to Mexico, it's like common knowledge. You can't drink the water. You shouldn't even brush your teeth with it. Don't even put it in your mouth. Make sure it's filtered. Make sure it's bottled, etc., etc., etc. And in her lifetime, she saw that change. So
Mm.
she would describe to me playing in the river, bathing in the river, drinking out of the river, drinking as a child, and going through that change in her lifetime. Now, can you
Wow.
imagine that? Now,
Yeah.
we're experiencing, I feel like, something kind of similar, similar shift to that, where it's like this. Yeah, it's an adaptability, it's an adaptation, but I don't think we have to continue to live with it in that way. I
Yeah.
do love the theme that you're bringing up of solutioning from love. Let's accept, but let's collaborate. Let's co-collaborate with Mother Earth and love Mother Earth and commune with Mother Earth and give back to Mother Earth and find a way forward that serves us all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not to say that, the problems aren't real. They're very real. Tessa, just so you know, what I'm seeing here on my end, the video and the sound are not synced. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just an FYI.
Well, I think I don't know if I've announced this on the podcast yet, but I'm using this new platform called Riverside, and
Ooh.
it gives you pretty stellar. It doesn't look good while you're recording,
Oh, okay.
full disclosure, but the product after the fact is really nice. So
Good.
you'll see it. You'll see it.
Okay,
I'll show
great,
you.
great. I just wanted to make sure that we were like copacetic and everything. So, okay.
Yeah.
So going back to this idea of solutioning, because you also brought up plastics before, right? And that's
Mhm.
a really big issue. And when you're talking about not having safe water, well, that leads to more plastic water bottles, right? Which leads to more plastic pollution. And it's just this like cycle that feels like it never ends. One thing that was really cool when I was doing some research for self-care for eco-anxiety is noting how many biodegradable plastics there are out there. How many new types of like packaging are available that are completely biodegradable. And because here's the thing, like we're not going to stop people from seeking convenience. Like unfortunately, where we're at right now, people are going to go for the convenient option. So, and all of our food is wrapped in plastic for the most part, unfortunately, as well. What if it was wrapped in things that were actually biodegradable? What if the packaging, which becomes so much of our waste, what if that actually was made to degrade and rejuvenate the soil? Because that's another huge, huge important part of all of this, which is regenerating the soil and making sure the soil is healthy, because that's a huge carbon sink in itself, not to mention it's where our food grows from and it affects the quality of our food as well.
Yeah. You bring up a good point. There's a term in farming for
Yes, regenerative
this.
agriculture.
Yes, thank you. My
Yes.
friend Steve is probably like, "Come on, Tessa, get it together," because he has a regenerative farm. It's called Organics, and he's Italian, so he's very passionate
Yeah.
about things like
Food.
basil and
Yeah.
arugula and tomatoes.
Tomatoes.
Yeah, and he has built his whole business on regenerative farming. So every year he rotates his crops. He doesn't plant the same
Hmm.
thing in the same place.
Hmm.
And it's so cool, and it's so cool to see him doing so well. So you're reminding me, I should have him on the podcast.
Yeah.
Talk
And
about
I
that.
that's actually in some of the self-care practices we talk about regenerative agriculture and how we can support regenerative agriculture in our homes and in our gardens. And I talk about, auditing our plastic use and looking for ways for use plastic alternatives. These are actually practices that are also benefiting our wellness and our health as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, do you want to share any of those practices, or would you rather us wait to pick up the book?
Um, okay. I mean, I didn't even think off the top of my head. So when it comes to regenerative agriculture, some of the practices I share, and these are in the last section of the book, which is the giving back section. Um, like I share a practice for composting. where I share different ways people can compost. I even talk about, if you don't want to compost in your home, you can see if your municipality takes compost and green waste. And if they don't, you can ask them to start doing so because many of them can. Or you can ask a local school that has a garden if they'll take your compost, right? So even if you yourself don't want to start your own compost pile, there's ways that you can still take your organic material and bring it back to earth so it's not just sitting in a plastic bag in a landfill somewhere, you know? So that's one practice. When it comes to plastics in particular, I share about doing just kind of like an at-home audit where you kind of take a look at where are most of your disposable plastics coming from, and are there ways that you can kind of sub some other things in. And then I share a lot of information about some of the alternatives that are out there as well. There's plastics, they're called bioplastics actually, and there are some that are literally made out of the exoskeletons of like shrimp and crabs, and they molt these exoskeletons. So that means they just grow out of them. You don't have to kill the animal to get the exoskeleton. So you can make plastics out of that. You can make plastics out of the juice of the nopales cactus. There are some that are literally being made by like putting proteins together and different. I mean, literally, like it's the science is
That's
in
why.
like beyond my ability to explain, but there are so many options. So again, this isn't an issue of us not knowing what to do or how to do it. This is that we need to get this quote unquote leadership of our world, which right now, unfortunately, is corporations and governments because they work hand in hand. We have to get them on board on the solutions because they're the ones who are creating the problems.
Yeah, they're producing the products.
They're producing the products, exactly. And if we don't have an alternative, if we have these alternatives, we can buy them. Now, of course, and this gets a little in depth because there's like a green tax, right? Where it's
Mhm.
kind of like when you want to have the more green option, they're going to charge you more for it. They're going to make it more expensive. And then it becomes something that only people of affluence can afford. And that's a whole nother topic. But my hope and my vision is that eventually all of our single-use plastics are phased out for biodegradable options.
When we're looking for these products, you said bioplastics, they're called
Hmm.
bioplastics. Is
Hmm.
there anything on the label you would recommend looking out for?
I don't think we're there yet.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't think we're there yet. I mean, I think you can see some now that they're either sometimes you see some that have a label that like this is made from post-consumer recycled products,
Yes.
which in some ways that's good because it's at least like creating a circular loop as opposed to using new like creating new plastic every time, right? So it's kind of the idea of recycling.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't think we're at the point yet where we're actually seeing these bioplastics being brought out into the like into single use. The only way one I can really think of, and these are kind of controversial, is the corn based like plastic forks and knives.
Hmm.
Those kind of corn based ones. Those are quote unquote compostable, but when people were like trying to compost them, it took a really long time, and they do better in like industrial composters than in your own backyard compost bin. And um, but technically they are more biodegradable. They're doing a lot of research into using mushrooms also to
Mushrooms are
create,
so cool.
mushrooms are going to save us.
Yeah,
Believe it.
in many ways.
I mean, even thinking about the mycelium network, right? Like that's so much a part of soil generation is actually not disturbing mycelium network, right? And allowing there to be plant biodiversity so that there is a more robust mycelium network as well. And
Ah,
for those who are listening who might not be aware of the mycelium network is basically how plants connect and communicate and share resources with each other through their root system by creating symbiotic relationships with microscopic fungi and bacteria that basically create like a lacy thread that links roots of different plants together. And the mycelium, which is the like fungi and bacteria, they actually transport carbon and water and all kinds of like phytochemicals to each other as a way to support the plants to support each other and communicate with each other as well.
so basically, they share their resources.
They sure do. They sure do.
We could learn so much from
Yes.
plants.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. Many of us do, which is wonderful. And this is actually kind of more recent knowledge. For a long time in forest ecology, the thought was is that the trees are in competition, the plants are in
Mhm.
competition.
Mhm.
And I just finished reading this book, well not just, but a few months ago, I read this book called The Mother Tree, Finding the Mother Tree by Susan Simard, who is a forest ecologist up in Canada, British Columbia area, so kind of the Pacific Northwest like you, Tessa. Um, and she at first she started working for the forestry industry, like the ones who are cutting down trees, and she was noticing that their way of cutting things down and trying to keep out competition and only planting the kind of trees they want to then cut down was actually leading to the trees not being as healthy. The ones that they were planting weren't as healthy. And so she got really curious about the mycelium network, did years and years and years of research of the mycelium network, and really discovered that the forests are not competitive spaces, they're collaborative spaces, and that biodiversity in the forest actually increases the health of every plant species, especially the trees that they do want to cut down. And then she discovered these mother trees, which is another self-care practice I share in Self-Care for Eco-Anxiety, connecting with your mother trees. But the mother trees are like these centralized hubs or networks. They're the older trees in the forest. They provide so many resources to other plants and other trees. And they discovered in their research that the mother trees can actually differentiate between the trees that are their progeny and trees that are not. And in some years, they can choose to send more resources to their young, but in general, they just send resources to the whole forest.
I think
Mm-hmm.
nature is such a metaphor for,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not
Life.
separate. Like when I say
No.
nature, we're part of it. We come from the earth. It's not like the myth that we were brought by a stork. I mean, no, we come from the earth. We're made of it.
Yeah. And storks are nature too, so,
Yes, it's true. Good point, Raquel.
Yeah, and I think we might have talked about this last time we talked, but I think that is my hope for this book is like the greatest misperception I think so many of us have is that humans are in opposition to nature. It makes me so sad that we kind of take ourselves out of the equation. We take ourselves out of belonging to the planet we live upon. It, and it's just inaccurate. Like we are nature. Yes, over the last 2,000 years, we have tried to dominate nature just as we've tried to dominate each other. The colonization we've put on each other is the same colonization we've put on land. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, Earth does not belong to any of us. We belong to Earth.
Yeah, we are of the earth. We are part of it. It's
And
so
that's why
interesting.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Tessa.
No, no, that's why you're much more articulate than I am today. You talk, Raquel. You host the podcast.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important for us to recognize climate change and the environmental challenges we face as spiritual challenges.
Mhm.
I think sometimes in spiritual and wellness spaces, we focus so much on our own wellness and, how do we avoid exposure to EMFs and toxins and yada, yada, yada. But ultimately, if we're poisoning the water, the air, and the soil, I don't care how much green juice you're drinking. You're still going to get exposed to all those things. And I think that, in spirituality, at least the way I look at spirituality and the way I feel into spirituality, it's the recognition of our interconnection. It's the recognition that while each one of us is a unique piece of a greater whole, we are part of a greater whole that is unified and connected. And we can see that in nature. We can see that in ecology. We understand that when we remove one species, it has cascading impacts on everything else involved. And I think that when we're coming at our spiritual awakening, we have to bring earth into that equation because it is our home, it is who we are. Our body is of earth. We are of earth. And if we don't take earth into our spiritual practice, we're missing out. First of all, we're missing out on a huge source of energy for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're also missing out on the greater picture of our own belonging and our
Mm.
and um, our own life, like our iteration this lifetime. Like we are humans on Earth in this lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is our focus. This is our life. This
Yeah.
is our home.
Mm. And we need it. That's so, I love this. I wanted to know, I remember you telling me about the idea for this book when we were
Hmm.
wrapping up our first podcast interview, and you had just finished that first book. Um, where did it come from? Where
You know,
did the
it's
seed get planted?
well, it's very interesting because this book, Self-Care for Eco Anxiety, which happened very quickly. Like I was talking to my editor about it in March, started writing in April, turned it in August, and it's coming out in April. So it happened really fast. But this book, my publishing house actually came to me and asked me if I want to write this book. Because there are, publishing houses have marketing teams and they let them know what are the quote unquote trends. Like I hate to say eco anxiety's on trend, but
I think
it
that's
is.
good though, because
Yeah.
it means people are interested in it and aware
Yes,
and they care. So
they
I think
care.
it's a positive thing.
I agree. I agree. They care. So my editor approached me and she's like, listen, we want a book about how do we deal with the eco anxiety. Eco anxiety is a big issue right now. People are really struggling with it. And we want a book that talks about ways to kind of deal with it. And I immediately thought of you, Raquel. Like, I think you should write that book. I remember when I wrote Everyday Plant Magic, I had written a much larger section on my own personal story, and I shared my story with eco anxiety and how, a creative relationship with plants really helped me break out of that. And so my editor was like, I know we had to take that out of your first book, but I think you should write this book.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Yeah. And we were, it was really cool. I mean, from my perspective as an author, it was really awesome because I didn't even have to write the book proposal.
Oh my gosh, that's like the dream. Hey,
It was the
Raquel, can you
dream.
write
It
this
really
book?
was the dream. Like, I just sat with my editor, we chatted about things. I wrote an outline based on our conversation and like the points that we knew we wanted to address. We knew we didn't want it to be another book that's like, here's what you have to do to be a good human. You know what I mean? Like, nothing like that. We wanted it to be a book that was about giving people hope, giving people connection, giving people love. So I wrote the outline, sent it to my editor. She took care of the book proposal, and within a few weeks, done.
That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, April 2024. Is there a pre-order website? Do you have links like
You
that?
know what? They probably have like a holding for it on Amazon already, but they haven't put like the cover up yet because we're still finishing up the cover art and like we're in the edits right now
Okay.
of all the graphic design and stuff. So I don't think we really have pre-orders up quite yet, but I will definitely let you know and send you a link when the pre-orders are up
I
for
bet the
sure.
best way to stay informed is to make sure we're following you on the social
Oh yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Good point.
Well,
I will
we'll
share
make sure
there.
all those links get into the show notes. I wanted to spend a little bit of time, at least because I know you have another project aside from this, birthing this baby,
Yeah.
in the works about intuition, which I know is another
Yeah.
one of your wheelhouses. You're such a multi-talented, um, fascinating individual. So,
Thank
what do
you.
you want to share about the topic of intuition? Because yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one. Well, I wanted to share because Tessa, I know you're really into intuition. Like we've
Yeah.
had numerous conversations about it. I know it's something that you're really curious about. It's something you want to feel like connect with more. So I
Mhm.
think one of my biggest messages around intuition is that when we allow ourselves to spend more time in nature, we very naturally increase our intuitive connection. Um, the way that we respond even the way that our body responds to natural environments from the nervous system perception, from the nervous system perspective, which is that it calms and regulates the nervous system, also increases our intuitive connection because our intuition communicates through our nervous system as well. So the more that we allow ourselves to be in relationship with nature, the more we end up being in relationship with ourselves. And the more we're in relationship with ourselves, the more we connect with our own intuitive guidance. And this can look like many different things. And I know for some people it will be, getting off grid, go like what you love to do, Tessa, like backpacking and really getting away from it all and being completely immersed in the natural environment. Amazing. But also, it's available to us when we're sitting in our office or sitting at our desk and we look out a window and we can look at a tree and we can actually allow ourselves to let our nervous system relax a little bit as we are visually looking at that tree. right? Like it can be as simple as me looking at the plants right above my computer right here and giving my body a chance to orient to the beauty. Right now, oh my gosh, the sun is literally shining off the leaves of my sansevieria, my snake plant, and it looks like it's glowing. And when I feel into that somatically, I feel expansion and joy and pleasure in this moment. So even learning how to orient to the beauty that nature inspires creates so much more wellness and internal connection, which is absolutely vital and necessary in this distracting world we're currently living in.
Yeah. This is reminding me of a I think it was a podcast I was listening to, and it was about this invitation, I think relatively related to intuition, but what inspires awe, that sense of awe.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the moon. Like, think about when you look at the full moon and it's like, whoa, and it's like a topic of conversation. Whoa, did you see the moon last night?
Yeah.
Or have
Yeah.
you looked at the moon tonight? And it's almost like indescribable how it
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
when you look up at the moon. It's a felt sense. What does that feel like
Yes.
in your body?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and when you think about the moon, and I work a ton with the moon, I share about every new moon and full moon. I work intuitively with the moon. I ask her for messages and guidance and share that in my moon blog. So I am a moon baby. I'm also a Cancer sun, Cancer rising, Taurus moon, which basically means that I'm completely ruled by the moon
I
because
love that.
Cancer is ruled by the moon.
Yeah.
So I am literally a moon baby. And I am literally the person who every single night, if I can see the moon, will be like,
Mhm.
oh, if it's new moon, waxing, waning, full, doesn't matter, right? Um,
Yeah.
what's so interesting about the moon is that when you look at the moon from an energetic and metaphysical perspective, the moon is our emotional body. The moon is our emotions. And we know that the moon has this gravitational pull on water on our planet. We are made of 70%, I don't know exactly the percentage, but over 70% water as well. If the moon is powerful enough to literally pull the water from the oceans, you got to believe that there's some kind of impact that's happening in your own body with the moon as well. And water as the element represents our emotions and our intuition. So, the more we connect with the moon, the more we allow ourselves to be in that awe place, the more we connect with our own magic, which is our empowerment, our sense of divinity, our sense of belonging, and that guidance, that voice of guidance that lives within us, which is our intuition.
It's a really nice reminder too to hear that it's not something to connect with nature, to connect with intuition, and those two being intrinsically linked doesn't mean that you have to go out, unplug, do
Yes.
the backpacking adventure wilderness, although I highly recommend it. And if you have
Yeah.
any questions about that, please let me know. Um,
Yeah.
but you don't have to do that. Literally, like I can just, while I'm talking to you, Raquel, I can look out and I can see the sky and I can see the shapes. I always used to love to like, what shape is that cloud? What do I see in
Yeah.
that cloud right now? And how does it contrast with the color of the sky? And what is the
Mm.
brightness, and that's,
Mm.
doesn't it make you feel, it makes me feel energized. Like it
Yes.
get bigger. I feel like I want to take a deep breath and
Yeah.
just, I'm sitting in my office. You're right. We can do this from anywhere.
Yep. And that, I mean, literally, that is what I feel like my mission is to help people learn to connect or reconnect with nature from everywhere and anywhere. And to know that, while yes, it is absolutely amazing to fully immerse yourself in magnificent natural settings. And me being me, I have my whole life always chosen to live in places that are naturally beautiful because it is that important to me. That being said, nature is everywhere, everywhere. It is earth. We live upon it. You can't separate yourself from that, right? So, how do we learn how to tap into that magic of nature, that awe, that beauty, that appreciation? Because those energies are empowering. And when we're in that lit up, empowered place, we have more energy to devote to our own life and we have more energy to devote to causes that really matter to us, like, protecting the environment or whatever causes are dear to your own heart. Um, so the way I work with my clients, a lot of my clients, so I am a spiritual life coach, I'm a nature connector, I'm an author. I do one-on-one sessions with people that are, intuitive spiritual sessions, as well as one-on-one energy sessions like Reiki, pranic healing kind of stuff. I use crystals and plants in that as well. But I also do coaching with clients where I help people learn about energy, how to read energy, learn about their own intuition, how to connect with their intuition. And everything that I do is also about how do you connect energetically more with nature. So typically with most of my clients, we start off with grounding and really understanding what grounding is from an energetic perspective and learning how to do it energetically and do it from everywhere because that's the foundation on which we begin.
I wonder if you could share any practices for that. If someone's like, okay, yeah, we use that word a lot. Let's get grounded. What
Yeah,
do we
yeah.
actually mean, and how do we actually do it?
It's interesting. I think sometimes people use the word grounded when they mean centered.
Mm.
When you're saying come back to your own heartbeat, to me, that's more of a centering process. For me, grounding has a very literal definition as an energy practitioner. And the literal definition as an energy practitioner is when we are grounding, we have opened up our root chakra and we are taking in energy from earth. And that doesn't mean we have to have bare feet on the earth, although bare feet on the earth is fantastic. And you will, especially if you're not someone who has felt into subtle energies yet, you will definitely feel more grounded with bare feet on earth than you will sitting in your chair in your office building. That being said, I am 2 stories up right now, here talking to you, and I am grounding. I am pulling energy up into my root chakra. I can feel my energetic roots that are buried in the earth, connected in. Right now, I feel, oh, the plants over here on this side, connecting in with my roots, helping to feed me. And I'm literally pulling in earth energy as I talk to you right now. So, one of the things I teach my clients to do is this practice of imagining your roots moving down into earth and starting to breathe that energy up into your body. And here's the key, because here's what I find a lot of people do without noticing it. They pull that earth energy in and then they, one, either shoot it up out of their head to connect in with the cosmos, which is beautiful, but you're not keeping that energy inside of yourself for your benefit. You're basically shooting it right through yourself, right? You become more of like this amplifier than you are really just like being able to take that energy in for yourself. Or I find that people breathe that earth energy in and with their exhale, they send it all out of their body as opposed to holding it in. So what I find what really helps most of my clients is first to let them know they can ground from anywhere. That's really empowering, letting them know that the power of your imagination, because if you can imagine your roots growing down into earth and you can imagine them pulling that energy in, you're doing it. You're literally doing it. That's how energy works.
You know what it makes me think of is mycelium. We're
Yes.
not separate from that. We are also part of that.
Yes. And in one of my somatic, so I work with a somatic practitioner who I absolutely adore. In one of my sessions with her, for those who don't know, somatic practitioner, it's kind of like therapy, but instead of it being all on the mind, it's therapy where you go into your body and you follow what's happening in your body. So anyway, in this one session I was in with her, I literally felt myself connect with my mycelium network, and then all these little mushroom people started like running up into my body, and then I was completely sober, just so you know, like completely sober. But it was like, wow. At the end of the session, I was like, that was probably the best trip I've ever had. Totally sober. Um, but what was so amazing about it, Tessa, was like I felt myself connect into the all
Mm.
that the mycelium network can do. And I literally started sobbing because it was so powerful and it was so all encompassing and it was so beautiful that like I cry when I have a happy. I'm crying when I'm sad. I'm a crier. But like I literally was like sobbing because it was just like I'm in every like I am literally connected to everything right now. And
Yeah.
it lasted maybe 5 seconds, but that 5 seconds was profound. Profound.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about 5 seconds is like that's something that you can pull up. You just pulled it up right now and you
Hmm.
kind of revisited, refelt it.
Yes. Yes.
You
And
can
that's
feel it.
because of sensory memory, which is something that I'm huge on, and is something I teach in my intuitive magic group coaching program. But basically, what a sensory memory is when you allow yourself to bring up a memory to the extent that you can feel as if that thing is happening in your body right here and now. And it's actually a fabulous way to work on your intuitive connection because actually uses the power of your mind to increase your vibration so that you can connect in with, this your intuition and your spirit team, which all are reverberating at a higher vibration than we're currently at. So using the sensory memory is actually a great way to bypass the thinking brain to get into the feeling body.
Gosh, I need that in my life.
Yeah.
We need that in our
Yes.
lives.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And as someone who thinks a lot,
Yeah.
knowing this now, when I have these moments of total awe or like
Mm.
complete connection, it's almost like I can be like take a picture.
Yeah.
This is a sensory
Let,
memory.
let's keep
Yes.
that in the body. Oh, I love that.
Yes.
That reminds me.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, was it Chandler? So we've been rewatching Friends since.
Yeah. Oh my God. And that was like that show was like a security blanket for me in my
Yeah.
20s.
Oh my
Like anytime
gosh.
I was anxious about anything in the world, I would watch Friends.
Yeah. I mean, my husband is not a native English speaker. He learned how to speak English when he was about 26, and he literally, without Friends, I mean, I, I think he really credits Friends for probably like 80% of his English speaking
Wow.
ability.
Oh,
So
that's so
it's near and dear to
sweet.
our hearts. And I mean, we've probably watched the entire show at least 5 times, and we're rewatching it again. But I think it's Chandler who's like, I'll take a mental picture, and he's like, click. Do you remember
Yeah,
that episode?
I think so. I think it was like the wedding, but I think in The Office they did that too. When Jim and Pam were getting married, they were like click for like
Yeah.
mental pictures too. Um,
So
yeah.
they knew about the sensory memory.
Yeah, I think we all
Definitely.
do. It's just we've never been taught to utilize it in that way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, which
Mm,
is fascinating.
so cool.
Yeah.
What do you want to leave the audience with today? What's the takeaway? And there doesn't have to just be one, but what's
Okay, I mean, the biggest takeaway, and this is something that has been reverberating within me for a few weeks now. I think it's very timely. I don't know exactly when this podcast will air, but I think that we'll probably be facing a lot of the same challenges we currently are as a global society. And I think the message that I really want to leave people with, and I might have mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to reiterate it because it is that important, is to remember that Earth does not belong to us, but that we belong to Earth. And if we could actually, and I'm getting emotional, if we could actually know that and we could remember that and we can embody that, I believe that all of our problems would be solved.
yeah.
Um, and right now in my personal life, and I don't want to get into politics, but like as a Jewish American, I'm struggling with a feeling of belonging right now. Um, and some of this is epigenetics, no question about it. But I keep coming back to remembering that my belonging is not based on what any human ever says. My belonging is tied to earth. And if I can ground and feel into earth and keep that connection, then I know that this belonging is an inside job. And I know that we all belong, every single one of us. We're meant to be here. Earth loves us and she wants us. Because if she didn't, we wouldn't be here. It would be that simple. One earthquake, one huge tsunami, one volcano, and we'd be all gone. So we're here for a reason.
There's nothing I could say that could follow that, so I'm just going to leave it with that, and hope that people share this episode. It's so needed right now. This is such a timely conversation, and if you're listening to this thinking of someone who's experiencing something similar to what Raquel just described, please share and let them know they're not alone, and that just remind
Thank
them,
you.
we're all loved, and that's why we're here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
And we all belong, every single human, and every single insect, and every single plant, and every single stone. We
need it.
belong, we're loved, and we're connected.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, that concludes another amazing episode of Outside the Studio. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned something new, maybe remembered something old, maybe felt inspired to apply something to your life. You can hear my dog in the background. She's doing a little happy dance. So Daisy enjoyed it. Anyhow, I wanted to just pop in here to wrap us up to say a couple of things. Number one, I have such an amazing team that helps me put these podcasts together. Without them, I wouldn't, be able to bring these amazing conversations to you. So thank you to my producer, my director of creative services, my sound editor, my engineer, Consistency Media. Don't know what I would do without you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the amazing creation and artistic musical genius, Drew Lovern. Thank you so much for putting together this music specifically for outside the studio. So unique to the show, only place you're ever going to hear it is right here. Thanks, you guys. You make my world go round. Stay well, everyone. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, share on the socials, especially if it's a show that you think, hey, this could help somebody else. That's what this is all about, right? We're sharing information so that we're better, so that we're inspired, so that we're lifting each other up, and we're learning how to be in this world, living on this planet to the best of our ability, sharing information and inspiring one another. And that's my hope. That's my hope for the show. Take care.